Welcome back.
Oh, hello.
We could have done it at the same time if we were good enough. I was
A
ready to
nice
sync up.
coordinated effort. Welcome back, everybody, to the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown. This is now round 5. My name is Eric Bartlett once again, and I'm joined by Justin Carris. So we're going into our round 5 game. We have Mark Jackson going up against Jack Aquino.
Yeah, Jack actually coming off of a 2019 Roanoke finish, top four, I believe. And Mark Jackson actually a player, local player that they actually squared off in the top cut of a recent Rutgers midseason. So both two players that know what they're doing and actually kind of familiar opponents here. Jack, obviously, coming off of a solid regional finish is a great confidence booster. I don't recall if he played at Worlds or not last year, but definitely somebody who knows how to hold his own in tournament. And we're moving into the later rounds of the event, so probably going to see a little bit more of the teams that have dominated this local meta. And a lot of the players around here tend to, stick a little bit more towards the teams that are like kind of have proven their mettle. But very often we'll see players that know how to succeed in their local scene, bring something a little bit more unique. So I'm probably expecting something like that. I haven't, looked over the teams yet, but do you know anything about either of these players or?
I know Mark is actually one of the more consistent VGC streamers in the scene right now. I know he streams pretty regularly on Twitch, so this sort of on-stream, on-camera environment he is certainly no stranger to. Jack is a player I'm not entirely familiar with, but it sounds like he's got a lot of accomplishments to his name. Mark, I know. He probably, since he's doing a lot of content stuff, probably has experience with a lot of different kinds of team compositions and all different kinds of range of teams and strategies. So I'm interested to see what he's brought to the table here. But like you said, we are in the later rounds here, so we're probably going to see some more of the high caliber competition and some of the more, a better representation of what high level VGC 2020 play looks like.
Yeah, much unlike the stream game that we just had between two of our casters, one of which me being the big fat L that I
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel about that last match? How
I
does it
would
feel
have
to
loved
hold
to have
that?
finished the best of three. Unfortunately, I
Yeah,
didn't know.
would have got the download on him.
Yeah, I would have actually. I had a feeling it might be Cobra Berry too, but I wanted to at least test it. Yeah, that critical hit at the end kind of sealed it. I think he was kind of in a good enough position where you know, I, the muddy water miss actually kind of helped me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But, he played well. The team definitely is one of those things where I would have liked to have gotten my second go at him in game 2 and 3, but yeah, Brandon's a great player. I think that he's somebody that knows how to play Pokemon well and has been doing it for quite a bit of time. I don't think that he's had too much regional success or national or world success, but mainly just because it's one of those things where you have to kind of hard commit to like a lot. I feel like the season itself has just turned into if you really want to have those big breakout performances, you have to really commit to it. It's something that not many people can afford the resources to do, or the mental stamina. Really, sometimes you get a little bit worn out. But regardless, I think he played well. Um, I will definitely get my revenge. And as far as this match goes, I think looking back on some of the other rounds, we had a little bit more. I've seen a lot of Excadrill today. I didn't expect to see too much. I feel like it was kind of falling off a little bit in terms of its spot in the metagame. You had this up and coming Durant taking his place, but Durant's kind of difficult to use and has a little bit of a consistency issue, whereas Excadrill can fit on almost virtually any composition. So I'm glad to see that it's kind of back. I think that it's a little bit underexplored in the ways that it could be used. You
Right.
could run some Swords Dance sets, Assault Vest set. Some people have even opted to running Scarf so that you can outspeed opposing Excadrill in sand.
Yeah, Excadrill, like you normally see those Pokemon, at least some of them that are really good early on in a format, usually maybe not stick around because everybody just becomes so used to preparing for them. But like you said, Excadrill is just one of those really versatile Pokemon that can just fit on a ton of different team archetypes. And I still think like even the sand-based Excadrill teams with Tyranitar and Excadrill together, and just having that Sand Rush speed combination is just so powerful and just putting on offensive pressure. But meanwhile, a lot of players have just been using Excadrill in ways with its Mold Breaker ability, which is really useful for taking care of Pokemon like Rotom, which can normally dodge ground type attacks with its Levitate ability. And I think you're right. Like Excadrill definitely has a lot of cool things that it can do. I know like earlier on in the format, people were trying to experiment with different kinds of move sets and different kinds of item choices. Like I know Wolf was experimenting around with Assault Vest Excadrill with something like Horn Drill as like a last move, which is kind of like kind of an off-meta strategy, but I mean, I definitely think Excadrill has a lot of different move options to make an item like that kind of viable. And of course, Excadrill is a fantastic Dynamax Pokemon. You have access to both the Max Steel Spike and the Max Quake, so you can boost its defenses on both spectrums. So Excadrill is not only a great offensive Pokemon, it can also become quite the tank if it gets going on Dynamax.
It has a lot of utility in being able to control the defensive options of your team. There's pretty much every Pokemon with any type of bulk wants to benefit from both the special and the physical boosts, but you know, that's enough on Excadrill. We're actually going to get into this match finally. So tell us a little about the teams that we're seeing here.
So on Jack's side, we have the Rhyperior, Torkoal, Indeedee, Vileplume, Charizard, and Dusclops. Meanwhile, on Mark's side, we have the Togekiss, Jellicent, Rhyperior, Excadrill, Hydreigon, and Mimikyu, and we're just going to go straight into it. So we have a bit of a Trick Room team coming out from Jack, going up against Mark's. A bit more, I guess, balanced team would be a good word for it, but yeah, we're just going to see how Mark adjusts to this Trick Room threat coming in from Jack's side. As we see the Togekiss and Hydreigon lead from Mark's side, and coming out from Jack's side, we have the Vileplume and Torkoal. So turn one, Jack having a bit of a faster threat combined with a very, very slow threat in the form of Torkoal. Meanwhile, Vileplume threatening that fast Sleep Powder.
Yeah, Vileplume having the Sleep Powder pressure is really important. There's no way for most players to really immediately stop that unless they have a way to change the weather. And on Mark's side, we actually don't see any way to immediately change the weather. So that the threat of Sleep Powder is definitely there.
Yeah, the best really Mark can do in this situation is redirect that Sleep Powder, which he decides to go with this on this first turn. As the Sleep Powder does connect into the Togekiss, putting it to sleep. Hydreigon going to be able to move first before this Torkoal and get a massive hit off with the Earth Power. There's going to be a clean knockout onto Torkoal. Torkoal not exactly the best Pokemon in terms of special defense, so Hydreigon, of course, a very powerful special attacker, just able to cleanly knock it out.
Yeah, really great play there from Mark. I think that there was a little bit of risk associated with the play there from Jack. Unfortunately, what he was able to do was when he went for the Sleep Powder, he was trying to get maybe the Eruption there. He might have been calling a switch or something along those lines. But Hydreigon getting the Earth Power off, maybe he might have gone for a Heat Wave, because I'm trying to dive into this. Neither player opting to max there is huge. And now you have Charizard coming in under the sun, honestly getting that attack off. Now with the chance to just go for another Sleep Powder immediately puts Mark in kind of in a bad spot.
Yeah, he's going to switch into his Jellicent as we are going to see the Dynamax coming out this turn. I wonder if this is going to be the Charizard that's going to Dynamax here, trying to get a big hit while it still has that stun up. And it is going to be the Charizard, going to be the normal Dynamax Charizard. So having access to the regular Max Flare and probably all the other Charizard moves that we know it loves to carry. Max Airstream, Max Overgrowth. Meanwhile, Hydreigon going to protect, most likely trying to dodge a potential Sleep Powder here, which does come out from Vileplume into the Hydreigon. And so a very good protect there from Mark as he's able to safely get his Jellicent in here. But safely, maybe spoke a little bit too soon there, as it's going to take a Max Airstream. And with that Solar Power boost, it's going to do a ton of damage to Jellicent coming in here. Yeah,
Jellicent actually just getting popped. The Solar Power being able to boost the special attack there, the Charizard. I'm glad that he was able to reposition a little bit. That was about the best play that Mark could make, but he's still kind of under threat from this Sleep Powder, so he's going to have to maneuver around and maybe sacrifice some of the Pokemon that have already been statused.
Yeah, and speaking of maneuvering around, he's bringing back in his Togekiss that is asleep, as Sleep Powder is going to go into that Togekiss that switches in, but unfortunately for Jellicent, it being the slowest Pokemon on the field, not going to be able to make a move this turn, as Charizard's Max Airstream just going to go right into it, giving it another speed boost, and Jellicent is just going to go down, not having really made an impact on this game at all.
Yeah, Jellicent just completely gone out of there. No chance for him to set a possible Trick Room. And one of the things is, like, in this matchup, because his Torkoal kind of puts on that pressure for the rest of Mark's team, once he was able to get rid of the Torkoal, getting a Trick Room option up would have been really important. I think that's definitely something he's keyed into his game plan. But I think that the Togekiss here being asleep means that he has no real way of dealing damage. He has not elected to max anything yet. With the threat of the Sleep Powder being in play, I might be in his best interest to just hope he gets the miss.
Yeah, honestly, Mark is not really in a position where he can deal with this consistent Sleep Powder. being put out from Jack's side. But of course, Sleep Powder has a shaky accuracy, so we'll have to see if that does come into play. Hydreigon going to protect itself once again, trying to not get put to sleep by the Vileplume. But Charizard just keen to keep throwing off max airstreams, going to go into Hydreigon to protect. That still does a ton of damage. Charizard just a complete powerhouse under the sun. Just going to keep giving its side speed boost here. So even Chlorophyll, you know, it was good for Vileplume while it, while it still has it under the sun, but it's still going to keep that very impressive speed even when the sun goes away. And now Charizard's Dynamax turns are over, but I would say that it got a lot done during those 3 turns.
Togekiss looks so happy asleep right now. Honestly, I'm jealous of the napping ability right there.
Definitely the opposite of Mark right now, who is definitely not happy that it's asleep.
Exactly, and that's kind of the trade-off here. The Vileplume putting on all this sleep pressure is really important. Not having any way to, maybe use something like a Lumberry or something that can soak up a sleep powder is kind of unfortunate here for Mark, and he's kind of felt the burden of that team building hole there. Once again, another sleep powder goes off and puts a Hydreigon to sleep. Yeah,
so now all of Mark's Pokemon right now on the field just being put to sleep. Charizard just going to keep throwing out attacks here and gets the Air Slash, gets the clean KO onto the Hydreigon here. Charizard just making maximum use out of that solar power ability as the sun fades, but Charizard has definitely put a dent into Mark's team.
Yeah, and getting the sleep rolls here too is super important. I like that Mark was able to wait here until getting the Rhyperior in so that he could, wait to Dynamax and possibly, make the comeback here. It's not entirely impossible that if he dodges the sleep powders, he might be able to actually stall out the sun by going for a max Rockfall into the Vileplume, get the knockout there, and then maybe make a comeback. I mean, Torkoal is gone, and then he just has to probably win a mirror against the Dynamax Rhyperior towards the end. But maybe trying to, hope that he can get a wake up here with his Togekiss.
Yeah, Rhyperior going for the Protect there. Going to actually eat up 2 targets from the Charizard and the Vileplume, dodging the Sleep Powder and also avoiding damage with the Air Slash. But Togekiss's Heat Wave going to do a lot of damage to Vileplume. Just chip Charizard just a little bit with a critical hit onto Vileplume. But yeah, Togekiss finally being able to get some form of damage or support off that turn. But is it a little bit too late at this point? I don't know.
Honestly, the position that he's in, he still has 2 full health Pokemon, and I mean, without the threat of Sleep Powder, I mean, that's the only real issue here. The Vileplume does get that Sleep Powder down. Something will, be prevented from doing any damage, and that's kind of why he's chosen not to Dynamax, is because you don't want to be asleep while you're using those Dynamax turns. Getting all 3 of the Dynamax turns is going to be how Mark wins this game. So Vileplume, having access to a speed boost here, puts it probably around the 140 range. It'll most likely outspeed that. I think it almost guarantees that it outspeeds that Togekiss in the event that he's trying to possibly wait the sun out. But we will see the Dynamax come out now. I assume this is going to be the Rhyperior to try and turn things around.
Yeah, very interesting how Mark has chosen to preserve his Dynamax till the very end turns of the game, but I think it actually could come into play pretty big for him right now, as Rhyperior is going to be the Dynamax Pokemon coming out. We're going to see what Togekiss decides to do here. It is going to be a Follow Me, trying to get redirect any damage away from that Rhyperior, which pretty much just gives Rhyperior a free hit. But Charizard's Heat Wave is going to be able to target both Pokemon. Not very effective, not doing a whole lot of damage at all. Sleep Powder still going to stay connecting those Sleep Powders, going to put Togekiss right back to sleep, but Rhyperior remaining rather unscathed this turn is just going to be able to get a Max Quake off, which is definitely going into the Vileplume. Going to be enough for a knockout. And and going to be raising the special defense of that Rhyperior, making it a much better, just improving its matchup against this Charizard.
Yeah, and I think the sun might be going away this turn. If the sun does go away this turn, then that was a smart play. I think that, possibly getting the Sand Chip might have been really important too, but the last Pokemon actually ends up being Indeedee, which means that if it doesn't have access to something like an Energy Ball, I don't know that the Charizard is going to be able to finish this game off, especially if the Togekiss is able to wake up. And I'm actually really liking the chances that Mark has in this game. Indeedee doesn't really have that much of an offensive presence, and I honestly might be electing to go a little bit more bulky for this type of composition, but Charizard is going to be able to get some damage down into this Togekiss, but definitely not going to knock it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, Indeedee, it does have access to something like Follow Me, which can redirect damage away from the main damage dealer left on Jack's team, which is that Charizard. But at this point, Rhyperior can just kind of bulldoze its way through the rest of Jack's team. And as we're going to see, the Max Rockfall, uninhibited by Follow Me, just going to go right into the Charizard. They want the knockout there. And like you said, Indeedee not the most offensively inclined Pokemon, and then with Charizard going down, I think Jack has just run out of gas in terms of how much damage he can do.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem with, going for the max a little bit earlier. I really like that Mark was able to identify that his win condition was setting the Rhyperior for a late game sweep. It's a type of Dynamax strategy where you're trying to find the best opportunity to, kind of counter your opponent's momentum. And seeing that Jack's team kind of like relied on that initial offensive pressure, he really just played this perfectly and is now with this max Quake most likely going to finish this game off.
Yeah, very well played to Mark, being able to just secure himself a very, very dominating end game position with that Dynamax Rhyperior. And going into game 2, I still think Mark is going to have to struggle with that sleep powder pressure, because I mean, he did a really good job of dancing around at this game and sort of maneuvering himself into a position where he's able to sort of mitigate the impact of sleep powder with the redirection from Togekiss. But I still think he's going to have a hard time dealing with that in the next game, because like you said, he doesn't really have a way of hard mitigating that sleep powder pressure.
One
unless,
thing
of
that
course,
Mark did really well was he outside of dancing around and switching the Pokemon in and out, he noticed that Jack was kind of ignoring his Togekiss, and I really think that the onus is on Jack to make sure that he pays attention, that the late game Togekiss Rhyperior is a really good package that you want to try and prevent from getting any type of momentum. There was a specific turn where the Charizard actually went for a max Airstream into the Hydreigon when he had Sun up, and he could have possibly gone for a max Flare into the Togekiss slot. And with that sleep pressure, all he had to do is, put the Hydreigon to sleep and then possibly target down the Togekiss, and he could have avoided a lot more of the headaches that he had towards that end game. I do think that it's on Jack to really adjust there and see, that he has to capitalize on his sleep powder a little bit more. Just because the Pokemon is asleep doesn't mean that you should ignore it. Togekiss, especially with Follow Me, is just such a big threat, and it's doing so much for the partners, especially when the partner is a Dynamax Pokemon. So those 3 turns that Mark was able to get with Rhyperior were so high value, and it's kind of implementing, a lot of things I've talked about today, just that, good Dynamax value turns are so important. And even though it looked like Mark was kind of on the back foot the whole game, he knew what his win condition was. He played to the end game, and just getting that damage down to the Vileplume was huge.
Yeah.
Being able to Follow Me away that last sleep powder was all he needed.
Yeah, that Togekiss being asleep sort of put up this kind of illusion that it was kind of useless, but so Jack, like you said, was ignoring it a lot, and I definitely think that came back to bite him in the end game, because Togekiss being able to just redirect those sleep powders away from the Rhyperior that was able to Dynamax, and Rhyperior just kind of cleaned up the entire game as it went relatively untouched for the entirety of those last few turns. Only took some small chip damage from Charizard, and that it was just able to pick up KOs and really maximize those Dynamax turns. And I think that's one of the crucial parts of setting up endgames in this format, is just knowing when to use your Dynamax and knowing how to properly make use of all 3 of your Dynamax turns. And I think Mark did just that. And I think if he's able to execute a similar game plan and sort of maneuver his way around the threat of sleep powder and whatever else Jack's team is going to want to throw at him, I think he can easily take this set.
Yeah, and honestly, in this game, I'd like to see maybe a possible attempt at the Trick Room mode earlier. One thing that is a little bit difficult about using Trick Room against a Dusclops team is that Dusclops has access to such a slow Will-O-Wisp that Rhyperior is Rhyperior has a harder time getting set up under Trick Room against it. But, Jack did not bring the Dusclops the last game, so that might be something that Mark may want to try and capitalize on. The one adjustment I think I really want to see from Jack here is, can he make sure that the Vileplume's sleep pressure is getting him the maximum value from each turn of max move. You need to get all that damage out into the right slot. Figuring out where you're going to get that large damage target is a huge part of this game now. So if he can start, making sure that when he's picking the targets that are going to sleep, he is properly capitalizing on the things that are not protecting. I'd like to see a little bit more of that, but we're going to see a Togekiss and Hydreigon lead here from Mark, and a Dusclops and a Vileplume from Jack.
So Mark going with the exact same leads he led with last game, but now Jack is switching it up here, going to be leading that Dusclops next to that Vileplume. So Vileplume not getting the speed boost since the Sun is now not in play. Of course, still has, the threat of Sleep Powder, but Dusclops still now threatening the Trick Room being set up here. But I think Mark did a pretty good job of leading into that, as he now has the high power threat that is the Hydreigon on the field.
Yeah, Hydreigon is going to be able to do, so much against something like a Dusclops. Without access to the Torkoal, immediately on the field, there is no guarantee that the Sleep Powder will be able to go off before a target, but there is the possibility that he could switch to Torkoal in this turn. It does associate a little bit of risk with it, but the value of getting something put to sleep, on turn 1 is super important.
So Hydreigon goes for the Protect here. Just going to be protecting itself from potentially a Sleep Powder or another attack coming out from potentially Dusclops, but Togekiss's Heat Wave just going to fire off some damage. Going to get a critical hit on the Dusclops. Still does very little damage. You can it shows just how bulky Dusclops is, but Vileplume going for the Sleep Powder going to land right into that Hydreigon's Protect, and Trick Room going to be set up from the Dusclops, as it basically avoided a ton of damage this turn by Hydreigon just choosing to play on the defensive side.
Yeah, I think that now that Trick Room is set up, one of the things that you kind of want to do is there's no real threat immediately on the field. So one of the ways you play against Trick Room best is you keep the things that aren't doing damage on the field, and you try to just set yourself up for a later game sweep where they aren't getting the maximum value out of their Trick Room turns. With Sleep Powder Pressure, Vileplume is actually rather slow, so even if it is max speed, we already saw that it did underspeed both of the Pokemon on Mark's side. So that's going to come into play. We're going to see a Dynamax here. I'm presuming that's going to end up being the Hydreigon. This could be a really big turn depending on what Jax chooses to go for since he didn't switch.
Yeah, I noticed what you were saying about keeping the play against Trick Room, keeping the things that don't do a lot of damage on the field here. Mark sort of, I guess, going against that philosophy by trying to just go on the hyper offensive here by Dynamaxing that Hydreigon. Togekiss going to go for the Follow Me, potentially just trying to keep those Sleep Powders away from the damage-dealing Pokemon on his side of the field. Dusclops goes for Brick Break, which is a very interesting tech that he reveals this early into the game, but now the Sleep Powder also going to be redirected into that Togekiss. Jack just 100% on those Sleep Powders, just going to keep hitting them. Vileplume definitely wearing its glasses today, as Hydreigon going for Max Darkness into the Dusclops. That is going to KO the Dusclops. Dusclops, normally bulky, but going up against something as powerful as Hydreigon, not going to be able to take that super effective attack. But I don't think this is necessarily bad for Jack, because now he gets a free switch in into one of his Trick Room sweepers.
Yeah, in my head, I was trying to go over the game plan here, and I think that the Hydreigon going for the max and that Follow Me was the turn that I would like to go for. But I would be afraid of giving that free switch into something like Rhyperior, because he didn't go for a max of his own Jellicent. That'd probably be one of the best ways for Mark to actually counter the Rhyperior under Trick Room. But then again, you're also eliminating the possibility for a Torkoal to come in, because if Torkoal comes in, then the Vileplume actually can't go for a Sleep Powder under Trick Room before the Hydreigon gets an attack off. But without a way to proc the weakness policy, I don't think that the Rhyperior is even going to be able to do too much damage under Trick Room into a max Hydreigon.
Yeah, speaking of Rhyperior, Mark going to bring in his own Rhyperior, as Jack going to go for the Dynamax. This is going to be the Rhyperior Dynamaxing, most likely here. Yep, he's going to see the Rhyperior Dynamax. And like you said, yeah, like Dusclops going down, yeah, did give him the free switch, but now he doesn't really have a safe way, I guess I would say, to activate his Rhyperior's weakness pause. I mean, in theory, like, Vileplume could do it, but, I mean, you still have to take a 4-time super effective attack if you want Vileplume to proc it. But Rhyperior going to go for the Max Rockfall into the switching in Rhyperior. That does not a lot of damage, and we're just really seeing how, how limited Rhyperior's effectiveness can really be without that Dynamax boost in the right situation. But Vileplume just going to keep going for Sleep Powders, going to try and keep hitting that Hydreigon. Hydreigon just doing a very amazing job of dancing around these Sleep Powders and just allowing itself to stay awake in this game.
Yeah, that was one of those turns I was talking about where, there's a little bit too much that's going on for you to be able to stop. The Vileplume Sleep Powder Pressure is so obnoxious. But that was essentially a flawless turn, a perfect switch there. Was that Max?
That was Max Wormwind coming out from Rhyperior.
What dragon move does it get?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Is it like Dragon Claw, Dragon Tail, maybe?
It's a rock.
Yeah, all I know is it just...
It's not a dragon?
It just went for a Max Wormwind. Interestingly, not into the Dragon-type Pokemon. I would assume that if it's going for Max Wormwind... Okay, whatever. Speaking of Max Wormwind, we're going for Max Wormwind on the Hydreigon side into the Rhyperior. This going to lower Rhyperior's attack and further limit its damage output. So, what a turn that was.
Yeah, I think that was... While it was beautiful to see a Rhyperior attempt a Max Dragon move, I think that it was a little bit short of the mark there, because the Rhyperior on Mark's side was able to... short of the mark. Rhyperior was able to actually get the attack off to the Vileplume and prevent the Hydreigon from being put to sleep.
Yeah, now Vileplume is knocked out, so just further eliminating the threat of Sleep Powder. And I think this is really good for Mark here because I think he's doing a really good job of stalling out these Trick Room turns and just wasting Rhyperior's Dynamax turns. And we've been harping on all game of how you need to take full advantage of the Dynamax turns. And I think honestly at this point it's been a bit of a stalemate in terms of the Dynamax play here because, like, you know, both sides have been trading blows. Not really a lot of mileage is being made here, but Mark just going to switch into his Togekiss now, still asleep. But Rhyperior is still content to just stay on the field here as Torkoal going to get the first move off this turn. The Eruption going to do a massive amount of damage, just knock out the Rhyperior, put the Togekiss into easy KO range for this Rhyperior. Oh, never mind, unless it goes for another Max Wormwind, which Togekiss, of course, is immune to.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that I disagree with the choice to go for Max Wormwind there. Obviously, it was a Hydreigon that he was attacking into, which is honestly a great tech move to have for it. Sometimes you might want to be able to do a little bit more damage to Dragon Pulse. I feel like the Wormwind has to be like a relatively low base power attack. I don't know. I'll have to look up what dragon move it actually gets. But the Hydreigon coming in late game at the end of the Trick Room is really important here. I imagine the Torkoal is choice specs based off of that damage. So he comes in here. He's just going to be able to go for an Earth Power right into the Torkoal or even into the Rhyperior. I'm worried here that the possibility that the Rhyperior might actually be able to get the knockout here onto this Hydreigon. Yeah,
Hydreigon obviously taking a lot of... Well, I mean, now it reveals... Rhyperior reveals Hammer Arm, which does not connect on the Hydreigon thanks to the miss there. But as we saw, Hydreigon's Earth Power just easily able to KO Torkoal from full. And with that Hammer Arm miss, I think that all but seals the game for Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he did have an extra Pokemon in the back, so I don't know what the Hammer Arm miss would have prevented him from finishing the game off with maybe an Excadrill or a Jellicent. So I think that was really well played by Mark. I really saw some high-level switching there. I think he did some excellent things with managing his opponent's Trick Room turns. I think that Jack definitely put out the output that he wanted to. I don't know that he was able to close the games out the way that he was trying to. There's nothing wrong with his game plan whatsoever. I think that he played it well. He abused the fact that he kind of had a mismatch with the Sleep Powder pressure. But once again, I mean, Mark really just played that beautifully. I have to give, tip my hat to him. And, great play from both of our guys on stream there. So I think we're about to switch over into our winners interview. We'll bring Mark back here to talk about all that excellent switching that we saw.
So we'll see you guys in a bit.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maeve O'Rourke, and I am here with, give me your name.
Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson. Great. All right. So I just want to talk about first, in those games, you had a really, really great technique in terms of switching out for those sleep powders and, you know, calling the protects on which Pokemon you were getting sleep powdered. What was your, what was your game plan there, trying to protect or swap in a Pokemon that was already slept?
Okay, so game one, I figured one of the best things I probably could have done was Stall at the Sun, but then I soon realized, you know, after he Dynamaxed the Charizard, he was getting those Airstreams, so I was really hoping, you know, Stall at the Sun until Vileplume was slower, but didn't matter since he was getting the speed boost at all. But honestly, my whole plan was just have Togekiss wake up because most likely it can two-shot the Vileplume, and then if it doesn't, then I could at least redirect the next Sleep Powder and have whatever's next to it as long as that's awake and take out the Vileplume. So yeah, Vileplume was my priority game one.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can definitely tell that it was probably getting a little frustrating too, consistently getting those Sleep Powders off.
He never missed.
He never missed. That is something that is extremely frustrating, especially with moves like that. Your end game, though, I think was really interesting. Preserving that Rhyperior till the very end, I think, really saved you. So talk me through why you waited so long to Dynamax.
The reason why I waited so long to Dynamax was because when he uses his Dynamax, then I basically have the upper hand because, you know, as long as I save the Dynamax for the end game, then I can basically just outpower his Pokemon because his Pokemon's going to have a hard time taking out my Dynamax as long as I stall his out first. So, you know, I figured that the best thing I wanted to do was wait for Charizard's Dynamax to run out. That way it can't use Max Overgrowth. If worse, it could probably just Solar Beam me afterwards, which I can, of course, protect from.
Right, and then also, I think in Game 2, when you started trying for that real Trick Room mode, leading that Dusclops, and you made the adjustment of Dynamaxing your Hydreigon instead of the Rhyperior, what brought you to that decision where you thought it would be better for you as a game plan?
Well, the biggest thing was one hitting the Dusclops
right.
with Max Darkness. I mean, the way my Hydreigon's trained, I think it very much is guaranteed to do that. So, yeah, as long as I eliminate the Dusclops, I'm very sure. I fought the team a couple weeks ago, so I'm well aware of the Dusclops. It showed Brick Break, which is, I believe, it could have potentially done to Rhyperior if, presuming it has weakness policy. I'm just guessing because I don't think we ever saw that item.
Yeah, it's a pretty safe guess, I am going to say. Other than that, what in terms of when you face something like that Charizard and you don't know going in if it's going to be Solar, I mean, yeah, I guess you can assume with that Vileplume for sure, but like looking into it and you're like, what is it for you that might be a little more frustrating if you're betting on it being Solar Power versus Blaze versus, you know?
Actually, I was really surprised it wasn't a G-Max Charizard because I think, you know, those have been more common. But, you know, after seeing the normal one of like, all right, it's Solar Power. So, yeah, just honestly, yeah, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, I am going to bring us to a closer. Do you have anything you want to say? Any last words?
Not really. Just a well-played game by Jack overall. You know, I've fought him in a top 4 MSS a couple weeks ago, so it was really good to play him again on stream. So really enjoyed the set. Awesome. Very well played by him. All
right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up. I am going to send you over to the Analyst Lounge within just a few minutes. So thank you so much.